The sudden guttural cough of the Hope Shuttle ripped through the late afternoon calm, silencing the usual cacophony of Harmony Heights. A thick, acrid cloud of black smoke belched from its exhaust pipe, momentarily obscuring the vibrant mural of a soaring eagle on the adjacent wall. The community van, its battered frame a familiar sight on these steep, winding streets, lurched violently, then shuddered to an agonizing halt, its engine dying with a final, metallic gasp. Inside, a collective groan of frustration rippled through the packed passengers, quickly escalating into shouts as the horn blared a desperate, futile cry for help. Children, already restless from the long day, began to wail, their high-pitched cries cutting through the tense air, while the oppressive heat of the Los Angeles sun beat down mercilessly, trapping the pungent smell of burnt oil and frustrated humanity within the stagnant vehicle. This wasn't just a breakdown. It was the suffocating weight of a community's lifeline snapping. On the narrow, sun-baked street, the engine's sudden silence gave way to a new kind of noise, frantic clicks of seatbelts, the scrape of shoes against worn linoleum, and a rising murmur of panicked voices. The brightly colored homes stacked along the winding incline seemed to lean in, silent witnesses to the unfolding drama. Passengers, weary factory workers, students with backpacks, parents with toddlers, pushed towards the single sticky door, their faces etched with familiar despair. The air, usually a rich tapestry of grilled food, distant mariachi, and faint ocean breeze, was now dominated by the metallic stench of the overheated engine, mingling with the sweat and anxiety of the trapped occupants. Every motionless second, the golden glow of the setting sun seemed to mock their predicament, highlighting the accumulating wear and tear of a community struggling against the odds. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was the latest, most dramatic symptom of a chronic illness plaguing Harmony Heights. For weeks, the Hope Shuttle, affectionately named for the promise it represented, had been sputtering, stalling, and spewing ominous clouds of smoke, each breakdown chipping away at the community's already fragile patience. Mr. Davis, the stoic driver whose hands were calloused from years gripping the wheel, leaned heavily against the steering column, his broad shoulders slumped in defeat. His usual calm demeanor was replaced by a grim set to his jaw, a silent testament to the hundreds of missed shifts, late school arrivals, and lost opportunities that these failures had caused. The frustration that had simmered beneath the surface, a low hum of discontent now threatened to boil over, transforming the bustling street into a crucible of collective anxiety. The once reliable connection to the city's lifelines felt increasingly severed, leaving families marooned in a sea of uncertainty. Amidst the rising clamor, a subtle, almost imperceptible detail emerged from the distressed machine, a peculiar, high-pitched whine buried beneath the general cacophony of groans and shouts. It was a sound that most would dismiss as part of the mechanical death rattle, but for some, a specific few, it resonated differently, a discordant note in the engine's dying symphony. The very air around the van seemed to hum with an unnatural vibration, a low-frequency tremor that pulsed through the asphalt and up into the souls of anyone standing near. The scent of hot metal and burnt rubber, usually a fleeting annoyance, now clung stubbornly, a heavy blanket over the senses. This wasn't just a random mechanical failure. It felt like a systemic breakdown, a complex tapestry of malfunctions woven into the very fabric of the engine, a problem that defied simple diagnosis and left even seasoned mechanics scratching their heads in bewilderment. Mr. Davis, pushing himself away from the wheel, stepped out into the sweltering afternoon, his gaze sweeping over the faces of his passengers. He saw the familiar blend of resignation and quiet desperation, the same expressions he'd witnessed too many times in recent weeks. The black smoke, now dissipating into the hazy Los Angeles sky, left a lingering metallic taste on the tongue, a bitter reminder of their vulnerability. The Hope Shuttle, once a symbol of connection and opportunity, now stood as a grim monument to their increasing isolation, its once cheerful yellow paint faded and streaked with soot. The distant hum of city traffic, usually a comforting reminder of the world beyond Harmony Heights, now felt impossibly far away, a melody they could no longer reach. A young mother clutched her child tighter, her eyes scanning the street as if searching for a miracle, a silent plea hanging in the hot, stagnant air. The engine remained stubbornly silent, a dead weight on the steep incline, defying all logic and conventional repair methods. Every local mechanic, with their grease-stained hands and decades of experience, had prodded, poked, and cursed this very engine, only to declare it a lost cause, or demand an astronomical sum for a potential fix. But what if the problem wasn't something visible, something obvious? What if the true malfunction lay hidden, a whisper of disharmony that only a particular kind of ear could detect, a specific pattern that only an unconventional mind could decipher? As the last wisps of smoke vanished into the golden twilight, leaving behind only the heavy silence and the growing despair, the question hung unspoken in the humid air of Harmony Heights. Would anyone truly understand the engine's secrets, or was the community's hope about to run out of fuel for good? The first rays of dawn barely pierced the worn blinds of Leo's small bedroom, casting stripes of dim light across the meticulously organized chaos that was his world. A faint, almost imperceptible hum from the old refrigerator downstairs was Leo's silent alarm, a familiar frequency that resonated deep within him. He rose, not with the abruptness of a typical teenager, but with a deliberate, almost rhythmic grace, his bare feet meeting the cool linoleum floor in a precise sequence of steps. His hand instinctively reached for the small, polished brass gearbox on his nightstand, its smooth, interlocked cogs a comforting weight in his palm. The distant, unpredictable blare of an early morning car horn from the winding streets of Harmony Heights made him flinch slightly, his shoulders hunching, a testament to the acute sensitivity that governed his every waking moment. His routine was his anchor, a carefully constructed fortress against the sensory bombardment of the outside world, a world he perceived with an intensity others rarely understood. His room, though small, was a testament to his singular passion. Shelves overflowed not with typical teenage clutter, but with disassembled clockworks, intricate engine diagrams meticulously drawn on yellowed blueprints, and a collection of antique automotive components, each polished to a gleaming perfection. He ran a finger along the cool, ridged surface of a vintage carburetor, feeling its subtle imperfections, imagining the flow of air and fuel within its intricate pathways. For Leo, machines were not just inert objects. They possessed a unique language, a symphony of vibrations, whirs and hums that spoke directly to his hyper-focused mind. He could discern the whisper of a loose valve, the groan of a misaligned gear, or the subtle scent of impending friction long before it manifested into a full-blown mechanical wail. This was his sanctuary, a realm where the world's unpredictable cacophony transformed into a predictable, solvable puzzle. A soft knock on the door, a familiar rhythm signaled Nana Clara's presence. "Breakfast, mijo," her voice, a gentle melody, cut through the quiet hum of Leo's internal world. He emerged, the brass gearbox still clutched in his hand, and found her in the small, sun-drenched kitchen, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and pan dulce filling the air. Nana Clara, her hands gnarled from years of work, but moving with surprising dexterity, offered him a plate without a word. Their communication was a dance of knowing glances and quiet affirmations. Leo would respond concisely, often with a single word or a direct statement, his gaze frequently drifting to a specific point on the wall or a detail of the patterned tablecloth, rather than meeting her eyes directly. Yet in the silent space between them, an unspoken understanding bloomed, a profound connection forged from years of shared routines and unconditional love, a bond that transcended the need for elaborate conversation. For Leo, the world was a vast, complex machine, and his deepest desire was to understand its intricate workings, to find the hidden logic beneath the surface chaos. He wasn't driven by fame or recognition, but by an innate curiosity, a profound satisfaction derived from deciphering patterns and restoring order. While other kids his age might dream of sports cars or video game high scores, Leo envisioned the perfect synchronization of a finely tuned engine, the elegant efficiency of a well-designed mechanism. He saw beauty in the precise calibration of parts, the invisible forces of physics at play, perceiving a harmony that eluded most. This unique lens through which he viewed existence, though sometimes isolating, also gifted him an unparalleled ability to perceive the subtle disharmonies that others dismissed as mere background noise or unfixable flaws, a silent language understood only by him. Harmony Heights, with its vibrant murals and bustling street life, was a symphony of unpredictable sounds and movements that often overwhelmed Leo. He navigated its winding paths with a practiced detachment, his eyes scanning for familiar landmarks, his ears filtering out the loudest, most jarring noises. He was known in the neighborhood as Clara's quiet grandson, a familiar, if somewhat enigmatic, presence. He rarely joined the boisterous street games or lingered at the corner store, preferring the quiet observation of the community from his grandmother's porch. The recent struggles of the Hope Shuttle had not escaped his notice. Its increasingly erratic coughs and desperate blares had punctuated the rhythm of his days, a jarring discord in the neighborhood's usual hum. He'd watched Mr. Davis with a quiet intensity, observing the repeated failures of the mechanics, a puzzle forming in his mind. And now the Hope Shuttle, a hulking, silent beast, sat just 3 blocks from his home, its metallic scent of burnt oil drifting on the warm afternoon air, a pungent reminder of its demise. From his window, Leo could see the agitated cluster of people, the slumped shoulders of Mr. Davis. He closed his eyes, focusing not on the shouts, but on the residual vibration he could still feel in the ground, a faint, persistent tremor that spoke of a deep-seated structural stress. He recalled the peculiar, high-pitched whine that had pierced the cacophony just before its final gasp, a frequency so specific, so subtly wrong, that it had resonated with a unique clarity in his sensitive auditory perception. It was a sound no conventional mechanic would have registered, a note of discord in the engine's dying song that only his particular kind of ear could truly decipher. He knew with an unshakable certainty that the engine had a secret, and he was the only one who had heard it whisper. The afternoon sun, now dipping lower, cast long shadows across the street, but a warmth emanated from Nana Clara as she stood beside Leo, her presence a silent anchor against the rising tide of community despair. Her hands, gnarled from decades of mending clothes and preparing meals, rested gently on his shoulder, a familiar weight that grounded his sensitive nervous system. She watched the Hope Shuttle, not with the frantic anger of others, but with a deep, quiet sadness, understanding that its silence was a direct blow to the very fabric of Harmony Heights, to her neighbors' jobs, to her grandchildren's schooling, to the dignity of their daily lives. She knew Leo saw the world differently, heard its hidden rhythms, and her unwavering belief in his unique perception was a quiet act of defiance against a world that often misunderstood him. The faint scent of her lavender soap was a calming presence amidst the acrid smell of burnt oil that still clung to the air, a testament to her enduring strength. A sleek, black SUV, starkly out of place among the faded, older vehicles, cut through the gathering crowd, pulling up sharply near the disabled van. From it emerged Dr. Evelyn Reed, her tailored pantsuit a sharp contrast to the community's worn work clothes, her expensive leather briefcase clutched with an air of decisive authority. Her dark, severe bob was perfectly coiffed, betraying no strand out of place, much like her meticulously organized mind. She surveyed the scene with an almost clinical detachment, her gaze sweeping over the frustrated faces, dismissing the emotional turmoil as secondary to the purely technical problem at hand. For Evelyn, the Hope Shuttle was a challenge of engineering, a complex puzzle to be solved with data and diagnostics, not the throbbing heart of a struggling neighborhood. The faint scent of her expensive perfume, a sharp metallic note, seemed to cut through the humid air, asserting her presence. Evelyn wasted no time. Her team, equally precise and efficient, deployed a battery of high-tech diagnostic tools, an oscilloscope, thermal cameras, and a sophisticated engine analyzer around the Hope Shuttle's silent hulk. She barked orders, her voice crisp and authoritative as she knelt, her knees surprisingly agile for someone so immaculately dressed, to peer into the engine compartment, her brow furrowed, not in empathy for the stranded passengers, but in professional frustration as the advanced readouts continued to yield confounding results. She muttered technical jargon, dismissing the local mechanic's previous attempts with a condescending shake of her head. Her eyes briefly flickered towards Leo, who stood a little distance away, swaying almost imperceptibly, his gaze fixed on the van. A flicker of dismissive amusement crossed her features, just another curious, perhaps slightly odd local kid. Mr. Davis, the shuttle driver, stood apart from Evelyn's bustling team, his broad shoulders slumped not just from fatigue, but from the crushing weight of responsibility. His calloused hands, usually firm on the steering wheel, hung uselessly at his sides, reflecting the impotence he felt. Beside him, Chloe, her university textbooks clutched to her chest, spoke quietly, her voice a balm of empathy amidst the rising despair. She watched Evelyn's team with a critical eye, not impressed by the shiny equipment, but deeply concerned by the lack of progress and the growing frustration radiating from her neighbors. Chloe understood that the van wasn't just metal and wires. It was the difference between a family eating dinner or going hungry, between a child attending school or falling behind. She glanced towards Leo, her expression softening, a quiet recognition of the intense focus in his unusual stillness. Evelyn straightened up, her face a mask of professional exasperation. "This engine is a complete write-off," she declared, her voice carrying over the murmuring crowd. "Or it requires an investment so significant it's practically a rebuild. We're talking months and hundreds of thousands of dollars." Her words, delivered with cold authority, landed like a heavy blow, extinguishing the last flickering embers of hope. She cast another dismissive glance towards Leo, who had now taken a few steps closer, his head cocked as if listening to a frequency no one else could perceive. Evelyn scoffed, a barely audible sound of disdain. "Some problems," she seemed to imply with her posture and tone, "are simply beyond the grasp of untrained, unsophisticated minds." The tension thickened, a palpable division between her sterile, intellectual approach and the raw human need of Harmony Heights. The crowd shifted, a collective sigh of defeat escaping their lips, as Evelyn turned to pack away her tools, seemingly ready to abandon the shuttle to its fate. But then, Nana Clara, her gaze unwavering, gently guided Leo a step closer, placing a hand protectively on his back. Mr. Davis, his desperation outweighing his skepticism, looked from Evelyn's retreating figure to Leo's intense focus, a flicker of an idea, a desperate, unconventional hope beginning to form in his eyes. Chloe, observing the silent exchange between Nana Clara and Leo, felt a surge of conviction. She knew Leo saw things differently, heard things no one else could. The dying light of the setting sun cast long, dramatic shadows, illuminating the silent, defeated van, and around it, the unlikely convergence of the brilliant, arrogant engineer, the despairing driver, the empathetic student, the unwavering grandmother, and the quiet boy who heard the engine's secrets. The stage was set for an unexpected intervention. The silence of the Hope Shuttle was no longer just mechanical, it was an oppressive weight settling over Harmony Heights, stifling the usual morning bustle. Days bled into a week, then another, each dawn bringing a fresh wave of frustration. The narrow sidewalks, usually animated with commuters waiting for the familiar yellow van, now saw streams of people walking, their faces grim, their strides hurried. Factory shifts were missed. Students arrived late, their backpacks heavy with unread textbooks, and the vibrant storefronts, once bustling, began to gather dust as customers couldn't reach them. The rhythmic clang of the nearby metro, a sound of connection, now felt like a cruel taunt, a reminder of the world beyond their reach. The air, usually alive with hope, became thick with anxiety, palpable in the weary sighs and the strained smiles of neighbors passing each other, each carrying the silent burden of lost opportunity. The initial frustration had curdled into a simmering resentment, threatening to ignite into open anger. Parents, their eyes shadowed with worry, snapped at their children more frequently, the stress of lost wages and dwindling food supplies gnawing at their patience. The once vibrant community gatherings in the small park grew quiet, conversations turning to hushed laments about missed appointments, cancelled doctor visits, and the looming threat of eviction notices. Fear, a cold, creeping tendril, began to weave itself through the collective consciousness, replacing the familiar warmth of neighborly solidarity with a brittle tension. Even the murals, usually so full of vibrant life, seemed to fade under the pall of despair, their bright colors muted by the pervasive sense of helplessness that clung to every street corner. Every morning, hope would briefly flicker as a new mechanic, perhaps one from a distant neighborhood, would arrive, armed with a fresh set of tools and a confident swagger. But each attempt ended the same way, with a frustrated grunt, a shake of the head, and the same diagnosis: beyond repair. The van had become a symbol of their predicament, an unyielding monument to their powerlessness. The city council, feeling the pressure, announced a community relief fund, a temporary bandage that barely covered the gaping wound, further highlighting the systemic nature of their problem. The clock was ticking, not just on the shuttle but on the very fabric of Harmony Heights, as its residents felt themselves slowly but surely being cut off from the city that sustained them, their lifeline fraying with each passing day. Dr. Evelyn Reed, however, remained an unyielding island of scientific certainty amidst the rising tide of desperation. Her reports to the City Council were definitive. The Hope Shuttle was a lost cause, financially and mechanically. She advocated for a new, expensive fleet, dismissing any notion of a miracle fix as sentimental nonsense. She occasionally drove by the van, her expression one of detached pity for the unfortunate situation, but mostly of professional vindication. Her gaze would sometimes flick towards Leo, who continued to observe the van from a distance, sometimes sketching on a small pad. A faint, almost imperceptible smirk would cross her lips. To her, he was just another symptom of the community's naive clinging to false hope, a distraction from the cold, hard facts of engineering. The pressure on Mr. Davis was immense. His usual stoicism began to crack under the weight of his community's silent pleas and the council's incessant inquiries. Chloe, too, felt the burden. Organizing food drives and advocating for emergency transport, her usual vibrant energy now tinged with exhaustion. She watched Leo, who, despite the surrounding chaos, maintained his quiet vigil, his gaze often fixed on a specific point on the van's engine, a silent, almost meditative focus. He seemed oblivious to the growing despair, absorbed in a world of complex vibrations and hidden frequencies that only he could perceive. His small brass gearbox was almost always in his hand, its smooth, cool weight a constant comfort, a silent counterpoint to the city's mounting anxieties, his mind already mapping solutions others couldn't even conceive. One sweltering afternoon, as another group of baffled mechanics packed up their tools, the Hope Shuttle let out a faint, almost imperceptible sigh, a final, dying whimper of its engine. The peculiar, high-pitched whine that Leo had noticed before seemed to fade entirely, replaced by a dull, lifeless silence. It was as if the very heartbeat of the machine had finally ceased, its last hidden secrets now sealed away in cold metal. Evelyn's team, called back for one last futile attempt, confirmed it. Zero output, no discernible energy flow. It's truly dead. The community watched, their faces etched with a profound, quiet despair, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the van in long, ominous shadows. How could anyone possibly revive something so utterly, irrevocably lifeless? The question hung heavy in the air, a silent, desperate plea for a miracle no one could provide. A new mechanic, fresh-faced and brimming with misplaced confidence, arrived the next morning, his toolbox gleaming under the harsh sun. He was a local legend from East LA, known for resurrecting impossible cases, and the community watched, a fragile tendril of hope unfurling. He bent over the engine, his hands, though clean, soon smudged with grease, prodding wires with a voltmeter, listening with a mechanic's stethoscope. The metallic clink of tools, the sharp scent of gasoline, and his frustrated grunts filled the air. He checked the fuel lines, then the spark plugs, his brow furrowing deeper with each failed diagnostic. Leo, perched quietly on Nana Clara's porch step, his small brass gearbox turning rhythmically in his palm, watched with an almost clinical detachment. He heard the mechanic's frustrated sighs, not as human emotion, but as another discordant note in the van's dying symphony, a confirmation of the limitations of conventional understanding. The mechanic's eventual shake of the head, a gesture now painfully familiar, sent a ripple of collective defeat through Harmony Heights. The fragile tendril of hope withered, replaced by a deeper, more chilling despair. The sidewalks, once vibrant with early morning chatter, grew quieter, the rhythmic scuff of weary shoes replacing the hopeful anticipation of the shuttle. Factory shifts continued to be missed. Children arrived at school with shadowed eyes, their tardiness a mark of their community's struggle. The bright murals, usually a source of pride, seemed to mock their plight, their colors dulled by the pervasive sense of helplessness. The air, once thick with the aroma of pan dulce and distant mariachi, now carried the heavy scent of resignation, a suffocating blanket that settled over every home. Leo, seemingly oblivious to the rising tide of human emotion, continued his silent vigil, his gaze fixed on the van, his mind dissecting the unseen vibrations, the unspoken language of the machine, a world far removed from the community's shared anguish. Days later, Dr. Evelyn Reed returned, not with the local skepticism, but with an air of clinical finality. Her team deployed even more sophisticated equipment, a high-resolution thermal imaging camera that painted the engine in ghostly hues of heat, and an advanced acoustic sensor that promised to detect even the most minute internal anomalies. Evelyn, her posture radiating an almost condescending certainty, barked orders, her voice cutting through the humid air. She dismissed the local mechanic's efforts with a wave of her perfectly manicured hand, muttering about rudimentary diagnostics and lack of empirical data. The whir of her machines, the crisp clicks of her laptop keys, created a sterile, almost alien soundscape around the battered van. Yet even with her cutting-edge technology, the engine remained a stubborn, silent mystery, defying every scientific probe, every data point her expensive equipment produced. Leo, watching from behind a lamppost, swayed almost imperceptibly, his head cocked as if Evelyn's precise technical jargon was just noise, obscuring the true, subtle whispers he alone could hear from the van's core. Evelyn straightened up, her face etched with a professional frustration that bordered on disbelief. "This engine is a complete write-off," she declared, her voice carrying over the murmuring crowd. "Or it requires an investment so significant it's practically a rebuild. We are talking months and hundreds of thousands of dollars, far beyond the scope of any reasonable repair." Her words, delivered with cold authority, landed like a heavy blow, extinguishing the last flickering embers of hope. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers, followed by a profound, desolate silence. Mr. Davis, his broad shoulders slumping further, looked utterly defeated, the lines around his eyes deepening into crevices of despair. Chloe bit her lip, her usual fiery spirit dimmed by the brutal reality of Evelyn's pronouncement. Evelyn cast another dismissive glance towards Leo, who had now taken a few steps closer, his head cocked, as if listening to a frequency no one else could perceive, a faint, almost defiant hum of internal certainty against the external wave of utter defeat. The very next afternoon, as the relentless Los Angeles sun beat down, the Hope Shuttle let out a faint, almost imperceptible sigh. It wasn't a mechanical sound, but a subtle exhalation of trapped air, a final dying whimper from its silent core. The peculiar high-pitched whine that Leo had detected on its last day of operation, a frequency so specific only he had registered it, now vanished entirely, replaced by a dull, lifeless silence that felt heavier than any noise. It was as if the very heartbeat of the machine had finally ceased, its last hidden secrets now sealed away in cold, unyielding metal. Evelyn's team, called back for one last futile attempt, confirmed it with grim faces. Zero output, no discernible energy flow. It's truly dead. The community watched, their faces etched with a profound, quiet despair as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the van in long, ominous shadows. The silence of the Hope Shuttle was no longer just mechanical. It was an oppressive weight settling over Harmony Heights, stifling the usual morning bustle. The van, now a hulking, inert monument to their predicament, sat stubbornly on the steep incline, its once vibrant yellow paint dulled by dust and neglect. Its utter lifelessness underscored the desperate reality. Without the shuttle, the community's connection to jobs, education, and vital services was completely severed. The air, once alive with the promise of a new day, now felt thick with the bitter taste of helplessness and the creeping tendrils of economic anxiety. How could anyone possibly revive something so utterly, irrevocably lifeless? The question hung heavy in the air, a silent, desperate plea for a miracle no one could provide, as Leo, his gaze unwavering, felt the complete absence of the machine's song, a void that only he might possess the unique understanding to fill. The stifling silence of the Hope Shuttle, now a grave marker of the community's dwindling prospects, hung heavy in the air. Mr. Davis, his face etched with a despair deeper than any mechanical failure, looked from the defeated faces of his neighbors to the unyielding Dr. Reed. He knew the city council's patience was wearing thin, and Harmony Heights was teetering on the brink of being completely cut off. Chloe, her eyes scanning the quiet, anxious crowd, saw Leo, his gaze still fixed on the van. A sudden conviction seized her. "Mr. Davis," she began, her voice cutting through the oppressive quiet. "What about Leo? He's been watching the van for days. He hears things, sees things, that no one else does." Her words were met with a wave of murmurs, a mixture of skepticism and bewildered curiosity, as all eyes turned to the quiet, unassuming teenager. Dr. Evelyn Reed, who had been meticulously packing her sophisticated diagnostic tools, straightened up, a sharp, dismissive laugh escaping her lips, a sound as cold and precise as her scientific instruments. "Are you serious, young lady? A child? We've had the best engineers in the state with millions in equipment on this, not some local eccentric with a feeling." Her gaze swept over Leo, a sneer playing on her lips, dismissing him entirely, as if he were an amusing, albeit irritating, distraction. The crowd exchanged uneasy glances, some nodding in agreement with Evelyn's cutting remarks, others looking away, uncomfortable with the blatant disregard for Nana Clara's unwavering presence. The heavy silence that followed Evelyn's words was punctuated only by the distant, mocking hum of city traffic, a sound that usually calmed Leo, but now felt like a physical weight, pressing down on him, amplifying the feeling of being exposed and utterly misunderstood. The sudden, intense spotlight, the collective gaze of the entire community, felt like a physical assault on Leo's hypersensitive nervous system. The air, already thick with the metallic tang of burnt oil and the unspoken anxieties of Harmony Heights, now vibrated with 1,000 conflicting emotions: skepticism, desperation, a flicker of bewildered curiosity, all directed at him. He swayed almost imperceptibly, his shoulders hunching slightly, his grip tightening around the smooth, cool brass gears he always carried in his pocket, a grounding anchor amidst the swirling chaos. His large, expressive eyes, usually intensely focused, darted around, unable to settle on a single point, picking up every flicker of light, every subtle shift in posture, every hushed whisper, each an overwhelming data point in a world suddenly too loud, too bright, too unpredictable. A wave of nausea threatened to rise, a familiar symptom of sensory overload, making him want to retreat into his carefully constructed internal world. Nana Clara, sensing his profound discomfort, stepped forward, placing a gentle, reassuring hand on his back, her touch a silent anchor, her voice a steady, melodic murmur, cut through the internal and external noise. "Go on, mijo," she encouraged softly. "You listen to machines better than anyone." Chloe, seizing the moment, stepped forward, her voice clear and strong, addressing the skeptical crowd. "Dr. Reed, Leo sees things differently. He's noticed things about the van that no one else has. He can help us." Mr. Davis, his eyes desperate and devoid of any remaining pride, looked from Evelyn's condescending face to Leo's quiet intensity, then back to the silent, defeated van. "We've got nothing left to lose, Doc," he murmured, his gruff voice laced with a raw plea. "Let the boy try." His words, sincere and born of utter desperation, were a lifeline, cutting through Leo's rising panic and giving him a flicker of purpose. With a deep, almost involuntary breath, Leo took a hesitant step forward, his gaze fixed not on the faces of the onlookers, but on the inert hulk of the Hope Shuttle, now a symbol of their collective pain. He moved with a deliberate slowness, his bare hand reaching out, not for a tool but for the cold, grimy metal of the engine block. He closed his eyes, his brow furrowing in intense concentration, shutting out the visual noise of the crowd, allowing his other senses to take over. He wasn't just touching, he was feeling, listening, allowing the faint residual vibrations, the lingering metallic scent, the subtle temperature variations, to speak to him in their own unique language. He could almost hear the memory of the peculiar high-pitched whine, the one he'd registered just before its final silence, a discordant note that he instinctively knew held the key. "There's a pattern," he murmured, his voice barely audible amidst the murmurs of the crowd, his finger tracing an invisible, complex line in the humid air. "A break in the flow." Evelyn scoffed again, an audible sound of derision, her expensive watch glinting in the fading sun. "A pattern? What esoteric nonsense is this? We have empirical data, boy, not feelings." But Mr. Davis, his despair overriding his scientific skepticism, stepped forward, his broad hand gesturing to the crowd. "All right, everyone, give the boy some space, let him work." His voice, usually quiet, boomed with unexpected authority, silencing the murmurs. Chloe nodded, a small, encouraging smile on her face, her eyes fixed on Leo. The crowd, a mix of skepticism and a desperate, fragile hope, began to disperse slightly, creating a small, quiet circle around Leo and the silent van. The turning point was clear. Leo was no longer just an observer. He was, against all odds, stepping into the arena, the community's last, unconventional hope, resting squarely on his unique perception and understanding of the world. The collective gasp from the crowd, followed by Mr. Davis's unexpected plea, rippled through Leo's overstimulated senses like a jarring wave, threatening to overwhelm him once more. But then, a subtle shift occurred. Mr. Davis, with a decisive nod to Chloe, began to move, his broad frame cutting a path through the gathered onlookers. "All right, folks, give him some room," he boomed, his voice firm, echoing with an authority born of desperation. Chloe, quick to follow, joined him, gently but firmly guiding people back, creating a wider perimeter around the silent hulk of the Hope shuttle. The air, though still thick with the scent of burnt oil, felt marginally less oppressive as the immediate press of bodies receded and the cacophony of murmurs began to subside into a more distant hum, a small but significant reprieve for Leo's acute hearing. Chloe, anticipating Leo's needs with an intuitive understanding, quickly noticed the harsh glare of the late afternoon sun reflecting off the van's chrome. She spotted a large discarded tarp near a construction site and with surprising strength unfurled it. "Mr. Davis, help me with this," she called out, her voice clear. Together, they rigged the tarp over the engine compartment, creating a makeshift canopy that softened the blinding light, replacing its harshness with a diffused, calmer glow. The sudden reduction in visual stimuli was like a balm to Leo's eyes, allowing his hyper-focused gaze to settle. Some onlookers whispered, confused by these seemingly odd preparations for a van repair, but others, especially the mothers who understood sensitive children, watched with a dawning, quiet comprehension, recognizing the deliberate care. As the environment transformed, so did Leo. The subtle swaying that usually accompanied his sensory overload gradually lessened, and his shoulders, previously hunched, relaxed almost imperceptibly. He took a slow, deep breath, the filtered light and dampened sounds allowing his internal world to find its equilibrium. Nana Clara, who had remained steadfastly by his side, now gently squeezed his hand, her touch a silent affirmation. Her eyes, filled with a profound, unwavering love, met his for a fleeting moment, a shared understanding passing between them that transcended any need for words. It was a moment of profound connection, a quiet reminder that even amidst the chaos he was seen, understood, and unconditionally supported, allowing a fragile sense of calm to finally settle over him. With his senses now less assaulted, Leo reached into his pocket, his fingers closing around the familiar, cool weight of his small brass gearbox. He pulled it out, turning the interlocked cogs with a rhythmic, almost meditative motion, his comfort object grounding him further. He didn't pull out a wrench or a screwdriver. Instead, he produced a small high-powered LED penlight, its beam narrow and precise. This was his instrument, not for brute force, but for revealing hidden nuances. He also gently removed a soft, lint-free cloth from another pocket, preparing to carefully wipe away layers of grime, not just to see, but to feel the texture of the metal, to discern any subtle vibrations or minute imperfections that might reveal the engine's secrets. The crowd, initially skeptical and impatient, now watched with a curious silence, their murmurs replaced by a collective, hesitant anticipation. Dr. Evelyn Reed, however, remained a stark island of disdain. She scoffed loudly, her arms crossed, her expensive watch glinting in the now diffused light. "This is preposterous. What is he going to do? Feel for the problem? This is engineering, not some spiritual seance." Her words, sharp and cutting, hung in the air, but Chloe, stepping forward, simply met Evelyn's gaze with a steady, unwavering stare, a silent challenge that dared her to continue her derision. The community, though still divided, felt the weight of their desperation shift, a collective, unspoken agreement that unconventional times called for unconventional measures. Leo, oblivious to Evelyn's scorn, took another measured breath, the brass gears now still in his palm. His gaze, no longer darting, focused intently on the engine compartment. The air, now less agitated by human presence, carried only the faint, metallic scent of the dormant machine, a smell that for Leo was not just an odor, but a complex data point. He took one last grounding touch of Nana Clara's arm, a silent acknowledgement of her presence. Then, with a quiet certainty that belied his age, he stepped forward, the penlight clicking on, its focused beam ready to probe the hidden depths of the engine, prepared to listen to the whispers only he could hear, about to begin the most crucial repair Harmony Heights had ever witnessed. Leo's penlight clicked on, its narrow beam cutting through the makeshift canopy's diffused light, illuminating a small section of the engine block. He moved with a focused intensity, his eyes, usually avoiding direct contact, now locked onto the intricate metalwork. He didn't grab a wrench. Instead, his bare fingers, surprisingly agile, traced the cool, grimy surface, feeling for subtle variations in texture, minute vibrations that would be imperceptible to anyone else. He brought his ear close, listening not for the typical mechanical hum, but for the ghost of a sound, the memory of that peculiar high-pitched whine that had preceded the shuttle's final gasp. The metallic tang of burnt oil, still lingering, was a complex data point for him, speaking of specific stresses and overheating patterns. Evelyn, arms crossed, watched with a disdainful smirk, muttering about pseudoscientific mumbo-jumbo. But Leo was already deep within his own world, deciphering the engine's silent language. His fingers paused, hovering over a small, almost invisible bolt nestled deep within a tangle of wires, near a component that most mechanics would dismiss as structurally sound. He closed his eyes again, his brow furrowing, a faint tremor running through his hand as he focused on a unique resonance, a disharmonious frequency emanating from that precise spot. "Here," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper, pointing with the penlight. A break of flow interrupted. Evelyn scoffed, stepping forward, her sharp voice cutting through the quiet. "Ridiculous. That's a standard fastening bolt. There's no damage visible, no reading from our diagnostics. You're guessing, boy, and you risk damaging the engine further with your feelings." She reached out, intending to pull him away, her disdain palpable, the sharp scent of her perfume momentarily overwhelming Leo's heightened senses, causing him to flinch. Nana Clara's hand, gentle but firm, intercepted Evelyn's, a silent barrier protecting Leo. He swayed gently for a moment, gripping his brass gearbox, then his focus snapped back to the engine. Ignoring Evelyn, he pulled out a small worn notepad and a pencil, rapidly sketching a complex, almost abstract diagram of lines and waves, an energy flow and resonance pattern that seemed incomprehensible to everyone else. "The problem isn't visible," he explained, his voice gaining a quiet certainty. "It's a microfracture here." He tapped a precise point on his drawing, combined with a slight misalignment here. He tapped another, creating negative harmonic feedback. "It paralyzes the system. The previous repairs only addressed symptoms, not the core." He looked up, his large eyes briefly meeting Mr. Davis's, conveying a profound, unshakable conviction that transcended words. Evelyn, her face a mask of professional skepticism, hesitated. Chloe, seizing the moment, stepped forward. "Dr. Reed, with all due respect, your diagnostics have failed. What harm is there in checking?" Mr. Davis, his gaze fixed on Leo's intricate drawing, nodded grimly. Under their combined pressure, and perhaps a flicker of intellectual curiosity, Evelyn reluctantly pulled out a compact, high-resolution endoscope. Her slender fingers navigated the device into the engine's hidden depths, her eyes glued to its small screen. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers as the image on the screen zoomed in, a hairline crack, almost invisible to the naked eye, precisely where Leo had pointed. Evelyn's jaw tightened, her expression shifting from condescension to utter stupefaction, a quiet acknowledgement of the impossible truth dawning on her face. "Impossible," Evelyn whispered, her voice devoid of its usual authority, but then her professional pride reasserted itself. She straightened, regaining her composure. "Even if this microfracture is the root cause, repairing it requires specialized laser welding equipment, which we don't have, and a complete engine disassembly. It's still a multi-week, multi-thousand-dollar job. This doesn't change the outcome, just the diagnosis." Her words, though validating Leo's insight, extinguished the nascent flicker of hope in the crowd, replacing it with a fresh wave of despair. Mr. Davis sighed, his shoulders slumping again. Chloe's brow furrowed, a new daunting obstacle now clear. The community's collective anxiety returned, a tangible weight pressing down on the quiet scene, as the engine's silence once more felt absolute, defying even this newfound precise understanding. Leo, however, remained unfazed. He didn't need Evelyn's expensive equipment or her weeks of disassembly. He reached into a small canvas bag Nana Clara had quietly placed beside him, pulling out not a high-tech tool, but a simple, almost crude metal adapter, fashioned from what looked like a modified bicycle spoke and a piece of discarded piping, meticulously sanded and polished. His eyes, bright with hyperfocus, returned to the engine. "We don't need to take it apart," he stated, his voice calm, clear, and utterly confident. "The alignment is the critical part. With this," he gestured with his makeshift tool, "and a specific counter-rotation, we can realign the piece and seal the fracture without disassembly. It requires precision, very precise." His quiet declaration hung in the air, a revolutionary concept that challenged every conventional repair method, offering a glimmer of unconventional hope, a path forward no one else had conceived, just as the golden light of dusk began to paint Harmony Heights in shades of uncertain promise. Leo, with an unwavering calm that seemed almost supernatural amidst the suffocating tension, reached for the small canvas bag Nana Clara had placed beside him, His fingers, slender yet surprisingly strong, produced not a conventional wrench, but a peculiar tool, a meticulously fashioned adapter, born from a bicycle spoke and a piece of polished, discarded piping. It gleamed faintly under the diffused light, a testament to countless hours of focused craftsmanship. Mr. Davis, his hands trembling slightly, held a small specific part Leo had requested, a seemingly insignificant connector from the engine's fuel line, now cleaned to a pristine shine. Evelyn, still a stark silhouette against the makeshift canopy, scoffed, her arms crossed, a sneer playing on her lips. "This is absurd. He's going to fix a complex engine with scrap metal? This is a waste of everyone's time." Her voice, though sharp, barely registered in Leo's hyper-focused auditory field as he prepared for the delicate maneuver. Leo ignored Evelyn, his gaze locked onto the engine block, specifically the tiny bolt and the section of the fuel line. His movements were precise, almost surgical, as he positioned his makeshift adapter. He didn't rely on sight alone. His bare fingers, incredibly sensitive, registered the subtle textures of the metal, the minute shifts in temperature, the faint residual vibrations that spoke volumes to his unique perception. He leaned in, his ear almost touching the cold metal, listening for the specific, almost imperceptible singing of the system, a complex symphony of internal frequencies that guided his every action. The air itself seemed to thicken with the collective held breath of Harmony Heights, every eye fixed on the quiet boy and his unconventional tools. The only sounds were the distant hum of the city, now seeming impossibly close, and the almost inaudible click of the adapter, as Leo secured it into place with methodical care. With the adapter in place, Leo's hand trembled slightly, not from nervousness, but from the immense precision required for the next step. He applied a delicate counter-rotational force, his muscles tensing, his face etched in profound concentration. He wasn't just tightening a bolt, he was realigning unseen internal components, coaxing them back into a perfect, harmonious balance. He held his breath, waiting for a specific, minute shift in the engine's vibration, a subtle thrum that would signal success. Then a faint, almost imperceptible click resonated, a sound only Leo, with his acute auditory sensitivity, could truly discern. It was the sound of the microfracture sealing, of the negative harmonic feedback dissolving, of the flow being restored. He pulled back, his eyes bright with hyperfocus, briefly meeting Nana Clara's, a silent acknowledgement of the impossible accomplished. Evelyn, still watching with a condescending smirk, now leaned forward, a flicker of something akin to bewildered curiosity replacing her disdain. Mr. Davis, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs, took a deep, shaky breath. "All right, Leo," he rasped, his voice thick with a mixture of fear and a fragile, desperate hope. "Let's see." He moved to the driver's seat, his calloused hand hovering over the ignition. The crowd collectively held its breath, the humid air thick with anticipation. The moment stretched, agonizingly slow, as if time itself had decided to pause. He turned the key. The engine sputtered, a choked, dying cough that sent a wave of despair through the onlookers. A collective groan escaped their lips, and Evelyn's smirk returned, sharper now. A triumphant, "I told you so," etched on her features. But then, something shifted. The sputtering, instead of dying, caught. A deep, guttural rumble vibrated through the asphalt, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. The sound grew, not with the familiar coughs and metallic groans, but with a smooth, steady roar, a powerful, rhythmic pulse that echoed through Harmony Heights. There was no black smoke, no acrid smell of burnt oil, only the clean, rhythmic thrum of a perfectly functioning engine. The Hope Shuttle, once a monument to their despair, vibrated with renewed life, its yellow paint seeming to gleam brighter under the setting sun. A stunned silence gripped the crowd for a single, pregnant second before it erupted. Cheers, wild and joyous, ripped through the air, mingling with applause, cries of relief, and even tears. Evelyn Reed stood frozen, her jaw slack, her meticulously coiffed hair seeming to visibly deflate. The smugness had vanished from her face, replaced first by utter stupefaction, then by a dawning, humbling realization of her profound error. Her sophisticated equipment, her years of prestigious education, her unwavering certainty, all had been utterly eclipsed by a quiet teenager and his intuitive understanding of a machine's song. Mr. Davis, tears streaming down his weathered face, stumbled out of the van, letting out a primal, joyous yell. Chloe rushed forward, embracing Leo in a fierce, unreserved hug, her voice choked with emotion. The engine hummed, a steady, triumphant melody, signaling not just the repair of a van, but the restoration of hope, the shattering of prejudice, and the undeniable triumph of unconventional genius in the heart of Harmony Heights. The engine sputtered, a choked, dying cough that sent a wave of despair through the onlookers, a collective groan escaping their lips as Evelyn's smirk returned, sharper now, a triumphant, "I told you so," etched on her features. But then, something shifted. The sputtering, instead of dying, caught. Her deep guttural rumble vibrated through the asphalt, shaking the very ground beneath their feet, growing not with familiar coughs and metallic groans, but with a smooth, steady roar, a powerful, rhythmic pulse that echoed through Harmony Heights. There was no black smoke, no acrid smell of burnt oil, only the clean, rhythmic thrum of a perfectly functioning engine. The Hope Shuttle, once a monument to their despair, vibrated with renewed life, its yellow paint seeming to gleam brighter under the setting sun, a silent, powerful testament to an impossible feat. A stunned silence gripped the crowd for a single, pregnant second before it erupted. Cheers, wild and joyous, ripped through the air, mingling with thunderous applause, cries of profound relief, and even tears that streamed freely down weathered faces. People embraced strangers, danced in the street and pointed at the van, their disbelief transforming into elation. The air, once thick with anxiety, and the metallic stench of failure, now vibrated with pure, unadulterated joy, a symphony of human emotion that drowned out the hum of the engine, yet somehow harmonized with its triumphant song. The vibrant murals on the walls seemed to glow brighter, reflecting the collective exultation as the heart of Harmony Heights began to beat once more. Evelyn Reed stood frozen, her jaw slack, her meticulously coiffed hair seeming to visibly deflate under the weight of her profound misjudgment. The smugness had vanished from her face, replaced first by utter stupefaction, then by a dawning, humbling realization of her profound error. Her sophisticated equipment, her years of prestigious education, her unwavering certainty in conventional wisdom, all had been utterly eclipsed by a quiet teenager and his intuitive understanding of a machine's song. The sharp, metallic scent of her expensive perfume, usually an assertion of her presence, now seemed to mock her, a stark contrast to the raw, authentic joy exploding around her, a silent admission of her intellectual defeat. Mr. Davis, tears streaming down his weathered face, stumbled out of the van, letting out a primal, joyous yell that echoed through the street, a release of weeks of crushing pressure and despair. Chloe rushed forward, her voice choked with emotion, embracing Leo in a fierce, unreserved hug, her grip firm, a silent validation of her unwavering belief in him. Leo, at the center of this storm of emotion, remained remarkably calm, his large eyes, usually avoiding direct contact, briefly scanning the joyous faces, registering the positive energy in his own unique way. The engine hummed, a steady, triumphant melody, signaling not just the repair of a van, but the restoration of hope, the shattering of prejudice, and the undeniable triumph of unconventional genius in the heart of Harmony Heights. Within moments, the Hope Shuttle, now truly living up to its name, was pulling away from the curb, its engine purring with a newfound vitality. Mr. Davis, his hands firm on the wheel once more, waved to the cheering crowd, his face radiant with relief. Passengers, who had been stranded for weeks, eagerly boarded, their faces etched not with weariness, but with smiles and lively chatter. The rhythmic whir of its tires on the asphalt, the faint scent of clean exhaust, and the sight of it moving purposefully down the winding streets of Harmony Heights were more than just sounds and smells. They were the tangible manifestations of a community reborn, a lifeline reconnected, allowing families to return to work, students to return to school, and the local economy to breathe again. The immediate relief was palpable, a collective sigh of gratitude that swept through every home in Harmony Heights. The once quiet sidewalks were alive again, bustling with purpose, and the distant hum of city traffic, once a cruel taunt, now felt like a welcoming invitation. Leo, standing quietly with Nana Clara, watched the shuttle disappear down the street, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. He didn't crave the spotlight, but the quiet satisfaction of a complex problem solved, a broken system restored to harmony, was a profound reward. His unique talent, once seen as an oddity, had become the unlikely catalyst for an entire community's redemption, setting the stage for a recognition that would forever change not only his life, but the perception of potential within Harmony Heights. The triumphant roar of the Hope Shuttle's engine was still echoing through Harmony Heights as the community erupted in a joyous cacophony of cheers and applause. Mr. Davis, his face streaked with tears of relief, embraced Leo in a hug that spoke volumes, his gratitude a palpable force. Chloe, her eyes shining, quickly joined them, her voice choked with emotion as she thanked him, her belief in him utterly vindicated. Within moments, local news crews, drawn by the earlier commotion and the sheer disbelief of a miracle repair, descended on the scene, their cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. Leo, at the center of this swirling storm of emotional energy and bright lights, remained remarkably calm, his large eyes scanning the jubilant faces, registering the collective happiness in his own unique, quiet way, a profound satisfaction settling deep within him. Days later, the recognition for Leo's extraordinary feat took a more formal yet equally heartfelt turn. A small ceremony was held in the bustling heart of Harmony Heights, right beside the now gleaming Hope Shuttle, which purred contentedly as a backdrop. Councilwoman Ramirez, initially a staunch supporter of Dr. Reed's irreparable diagnosis, stood beside a visibly humbled Evelyn Reed. Councilwoman Ramirez, her voice brimming with respect, spoke of Leo's unparalleled ingenuity and the invaluable lesson in looking beyond conventional wisdom. Her gaze often drifted to Leo, who stood quietly beside Nana Clara, absorbing the praise with a slight, almost imperceptible sway, his small brass gearbox clutched in his hand, a testament to his enduring need for comfort amidst the spotlight. Then came the announcement that sent another wave of cheers through the community. On behalf of the City Council, and in recognition of his extraordinary talent and his selfless act of community service, we are proud to offer Leo a full scholarship to the university of his choice, a scholarship that will cover all expenses for a mechanical engineering degree. Nana Clara gasped, tears welling in her eyes as she pulled Leo into a fierce hug, murmuring words of profound pride. Leo, usually so reserved, allowed a genuine beaming smile to grace his lips, his eyes for a fleeting moment, meeting Evelyn Reed's, who offered a small, respectful nod, a silent acknowledgement of his genius, a stark contrast to her earlier disdain. The ripple effect of Leo's achievement extended far beyond the scholarship. Invitations poured in, local tech companies wanted to meet him, engineering firms offered internships, and community groups sought his advice on various mechanical issues. He was no longer just Clara's quiet grandson. He was Leo, the one who heard the engine's secrets, treated with genuine respect and admiration. Mr. Davis would often stop by Nana Clara's porch, not just for coffee, but to chat with Leo about the shuttle's continued smooth operation, valuing his insights. Even Evelyn Reed, shedding her professional armor, approached him privately, extending a genuine apology and offering her personal mentorship, acknowledging that true innovation sometimes defied textbooks and degrees. Harmony Heights itself began to transform. Inspired by Leo's success, the City Council launched new initiatives to identify and nurture unconventional talents within underserved communities, understanding that potential often lay hidden beneath societal expectations. The community, once quick to dismiss difference, now embraced neurodiversity as a source of strength, a different way of seeing and solving problems. A new mural began to take shape on the side of the Hope Shuttle, painted by local artists, a vibrant depiction of a stylized gear, intertwined with an eagle symbolizing Leo's ingenuity and the soaring spirit of their revitalized neighborhood, a constant reminder of the quiet boy who had saved their lifeline. Leo's life, once a carefully structured sanctuary against an overwhelming world, was now blossoming with purpose and possibility. He spent hours poring over university brochures, his fingers tracing complex diagrams, his mind already envisioning new designs, new solutions. He still found comfort in his routines and his brass gearbox, but now the world felt less like a chaotic assault and more like a vast, intricate machine waiting to be understood, its harmonious hum calling to him. He knew his journey was just beginning, a path forged not by conventional expectations, but by the undeniable power of his unique mind, leading him towards a future brighter and more fulfilling than he had ever dared to imagine. The triumphant roar of the Hope Shuttle's engine was still echoing through Harmony Heights as the community erupted in a joyous cacophony of cheers and applause. Mr. Davis, his face streaked with tears of relief, embraced Leo in a hug that spoke volumes, his gratitude a palpable force. Chloe, her eyes shining, quickly joined them, her voice choked with emotion as she thanked him, her belief in him utterly vindicated. Within moments, local news crews, drawn by the earlier commotion and the sheer disbelief of a miracle repair, descended on the scene, their cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. Leo, at the center of this swirling storm of emotional energy and bright lights, remained remarkably calm, his large eyes scanning the jubilant faces, registering the collective happiness in his own unique, quiet way, a profound satisfaction settling deep within him, a silent counterpoint to the boisterous celebration around him, absorbing the energy in his own analytical fashion, already processing the successful outcome with an internal calm that defied the external chaos. Days later, the recognition for Leo's extraordinary feat took a more formal yet equally heartfelt turn. A small ceremony was held in the bustling heart of Harmony Heights, right beside the now gleaming Hope Shuttle, which purred contentedly as a backdrop, a living testament to his genius. Councilwoman Ramirez, initially a staunch supporter of Dr. Reed's irreparable diagnosis, stood beside a visibly humbled Evelyn Reed, whose usual severe posture was notably less rigid. Councilwoman Ramirez, her voice brimming with genuine respect, spoke of Leo's unparalleled ingenuity and the invaluable lesson in looking beyond conventional wisdom, her words echoing with newfound understanding. Her gaze often drifted to Leo, who stood quietly beside Nana Clara, absorbing the praise with a slight, almost imperceptible sway, his small brass gearbox clutched in his hand, a testament to his enduring need for comfort amidst the spotlight, a quiet anchor in a world now clamoring for his attention. Then came the announcement that sent another wave of cheers through the community, a sound of collective triumph and future promise. On behalf of the City Council, and in recognition of his extraordinary talent and his selfless act of community service, we are proud to offer Leo a full scholarship to the university of his choice, a scholarship that will cover all expenses for a mechanical engineering degree, a pathway to limitless possibilities. Nana Clara gasped, tears welling in her eyes as she pulled Leo into a fierce hug, murmuring words of profound pride and whispering blessings, her heart overflowing with a mother's fierce joy. Leo, usually so reserved and private in his emotions, allowed a genuine beaming smile to grace his lips, a rare and beautiful sight, his eyes, for a fleeting moment, meeting Evelyn Reed's, who offered a small, respectful nod, a silent acknowledgement of his undeniable genius, a stark contrast to her earlier disdain, a bridge built across intellectual divides. The ripple effect of Leo's achievement extended far beyond the scholarship, transforming his quiet existence into a landscape of burgeoning opportunity. Invitations poured in from across the city. Local tech companies wanted to meet him, eager to tap into his unique problem-solving abilities. Prestigious engineering firms offered internships, recognizing a prodigy in their midst, and community groups sought his advice on various mechanical issues, valuing his unconventional insights. He was no longer just Clara's quiet grandson. He was Leo, the one who heard the engine's secrets, treated with genuine respect and admiration by everyone, from the local shopkeepers to city officials. Mr. Davis would often stop by Nana Clara's porch, not just for coffee, but to chat with Leo about the shuttle's continued smooth operation, valuing his insights and friendship. Even Evelyn Reed, shedding her professional armor, approached him privately, extending a genuine apology and offering her personal mentorship, acknowledging that true innovation sometimes defied textbooks and degrees, a profound shift in her perspective. Harmony Heights itself began to transform, blossoming with a newfound sense of collective empowerment and understanding. Inspired by Leo's success, the City Council, now recognizing the untapped wealth of talent within their diverse population, launched new initiatives to identify and nurture unconventional abilities within underserved communities, understanding that potential often lay hidden beneath societal expectations and traditional metrics. The community, once quick to dismiss difference or view it with suspicion, now embraced neurodiversity as a profound source of strength, a different way of seeing and solving problems that transcended conventional boundaries. A new mural began to take shape on the side of the Hope Shuttle, painted by local artists with vibrant, hopeful colors. a striking depiction of a stylized gear intricately intertwined with a soaring eagle, symbolizing Leo's ingenuity and the soaring spirit of their revitalized neighborhood, a constant vivid reminder of the quiet boy who had saved their lifeline and redefined what was possible. Leo's life, once a carefully structured sanctuary against an overwhelming world, was now blossoming with purpose and boundless possibility. He spent hours poring over university brochures, his slender fingers tracing complex diagrams of machines yet to be built, his hyper-focused mind already envisioning new designs, new solutions to the intricate puzzles of the world. He still found profound comfort in his familiar routines and the cool, smooth brass gearbox he always carried, a grounding presence amidst his expanding horizons. But now, the world felt less like a chaotic, assaulting force and more like a vast, intricate machine waiting patiently to be understood, its harmonious hum calling to him with a melody of promise. He knew his journey was just beginning, a path forged not by conventional expectations or societal norms, but by the undeniable power of his unique mind, leading him towards a future brighter and more fulfilling than he had ever dared to imagine, a future where every whisper of a machine held a secret waiting for his touch.